Boom. Here we go. Let's hope this application screen sharing works. No, now it's doing that same thing that it was doing before. Meh, I'll just do the entire screen. Fine. Boom. Whoa, that's a lot of stuff there. Can you see PowerPoint now? Is that visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great, good. Then I'm gonna do this and do it that way. Thank you. Okay, great. So Facebook news feed. So what we'll cover, basically Facebook's feed, how it evolved, the basic models, the principles that it works on, and then we'll build into how they extract revenues from the feed, right? So obviously Facebook exists in a sense to make money, right? That's the reason why people make businesses. And the feed is something that supports Facebook making more money. So it's targeted toward that. Eventually we'll talk about some other related topics, content management, cloud systems, and then we'll get back into databases. We'll discuss a few key things, ACID properties, and a little bit more about NoSQL systems. So, okay, so in case there's anyone here who's never used Facebook, it has a feature called News Feed, or more commonly called just the feed. So it's essentially a stream of content, mostly posted from your friends or friends of friends, and then there are ads sprinkled in there. Some of the ads are through Facebook, and some of them, I mean, they're notifications from Facebook, and of course other people that they hope you click on the ads and go to their site and buy their stuff. So key questions for Facebook feed. Number one, what determines the feed's content sequence? Why does Facebook take this approach? Content managed and delivered, right? Because there are a lot of options for how you could structure the feed. Why does Facebook do it the way it does? Okay, well, originally, right, circa 2004, 2005, Facebook, or as it was originally called, the Facebook, worked in directory mode like MySpace. If you wanted to see what people were doing, you actually had to go to their profile page and check it out. So there was no feed, right? I don't know if any of you used Facebook that far enough to remember that, but once upon a time, yeah, Facebook did not have a feed. Now, News 2000 and didn't have nearly as much traffic as it does now, right? It was still kind of big, it was getting big, but it wasn't the global thing that it is now. So they had way fewer users, and importantly, they had much less friend activity per user, right? So nowadays, many people on Facebook have several hundred friends, right? That is quite typical. Well, if you have several hundred friends, you're going to get a lot more traffic in your feed than you would have, say, back in 2006. Maybe you only had, 20, 30, 40 friends. So way back when, 15 years ago, it was generally viable to show every user the entire chronological sequence of all recent activity, right? So everything your friends had done in the last few days, you could conceivably see that. Because if you had, say 40 friends and each of them posts something once or twice a day, yeah, that's a couple hundred things. Facebook could bring that all up. Okay, but what happens? Well, scale, right? So as Facebook gets bigger, in practice, what they need to do is prioritize and basically throttle the feed. So they're not going to show you everything. They're trying to figure out what stuff you're most interested in and show you that. Excuse me for a second. I need a drink of water here. So, because people have more friends, and those friends tend to be posting more often, there's a window where, like any application you involved with, it wanted to send advertisements to other people to have them join. So like your Facebook account could constantly be flooded with this chatter from people playing, whatever video games they had on there or other apps. Yeah, you had a lot of that kind of posting activity. Another thing, advertisers obviously want to reach users, but most users aren't interested in most ads. So they got to work out that kind of ratio as well, figuring how much advertising people are willing to tolerate in their feed before they kind of stop using Facebook so much. So borrowing from Google's PageRank formula, right? So PageRank was a scheme that Google had for ranking search results. Facebook used a multi-factor formula to rank posts, and it includes three key factors: affinity, weight, and time decay. So we'll talk about them for a second. So affinity is just a one-way connection strength. Basically, how much you like a particular person. And that's measured through things like the frequency of interactions and how many mutual friends you have. So, for example, if you're friends with somebody on Facebook who has like 3,000 friends, you're probably not going to be a big part of their life, right? They're going to have a lot of friends. Chances are you're not part of their core small group of friends. You may be pretty peripheral to them. On the other hand, if you have a small group of friends, it is much more likely that you as a friend will be important to them, right? So if you're friends with somebody who has, say, 6 friends, then you're a huge part of their Facebook experience, right? So affinity assesses things like that. And it's also the frequency of interaction. So how often you communicate with each other, you like on each other's posts, stuff like that. So as we all know from real life, you can like one person a lot more than they like you, and vice versa. So Facebook's going to try to say, if you are interested in what someone has to say, they're going to put more of that in your feed, right? But it doesn't necessarily work the other way. Second piece is weight. So weight is essentially the significance of actions and content. So, for example, if somebody posts up a picture, you could click like for it, and that's nice. But if you actually go into the post and you write something like, wow, it looks like you're all having a great time on vacation, wish I were there, Facebook's going to assess that, and they're going to say, well, you know what? You went to some trouble to actually write a comment as opposed to just clicking like everybody else does. So we're going to think that this user, these kinds of media, right, photos, as far as they can assess their importance to you, they're going to say, yeah, that's more the stuff that you want to see. And in general, pictures have a greater weight than, say, text posts. So if you post a picture on your timeline, that's going to tend to go into more people's feeds than if you just make some random throwaway comment without a picture. And the reason is Facebook knows that people like seeing pictures. In general, they're pictures, unless you have an extremely strong preference that you say you never click on a picture and you often click on text things, right, or comment against them. Then yeah, you might be able to tip it the other way. But as a default setting, Facebook gives photos a much higher weight than ordinary text posts. Last thing is time decay. So time decay is how Facebook filters out older content, right? So in general, Facebook wants to show you recent posts, which means that the post ranks continually decline. So there's always going to be a time decay in how high a post will rank based on how old it is. Now, what happens in real life, though, of course, that can be outweighed by user interaction. So what you'll often see is you'll post something, and right away, like within the first 5 minutes, half an hour, whatever, your inner circle of people may often like it if they're around. Over the course of the day, what that'll do is it'll drive up the ranking of the post. So Facebook will say, oh, some small subset of people like this, it's pretty popular for that, we're going to rank it higher, let's shop it out to your next peripheral group of friends, right? So if you have a popular post, it's going to get shown by a wider circle. And you'll often see this happen in batches of users. So you'll see like your good buddies on Facebook will maybe like on a picture in the first day or so you have it up. And then over the next 3, 4, 5, even 6 days, you'll start seeing more and more peripheral groups of people. You'll be like, oh, so-and-so, who I know is on time, but they saw my picture like 4 days after I posted it and liked it. Right? Just because you don't have that much interaction with them, unless you have a buildup of popularity on a post, Facebook's probably not going to show it to those more peripheral people. Okay? So those 3 factors, affinity, weight, and time decay, will determine who sees what posts and when. Now, Edgerank, right? Edgerank was the system for that. And it had those 3 factors, but Facebook has moved way beyond Edgerank. So the idea with Edgerank, think about Facebook in 2006. They have some smart people in a room, they're sitting around, they're like, hey, how should we set this up? We're going to do this news feed that people haven't really done before. How are we going to show people what we think they want to see? Well, basically, they come up with some reasonable guesses, right? They could say, well, let's figure out how much the people like each other, right? And use that as a factor. And another guy says, well, I think photos should be more important than text. And people think, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then they say, well, we don't want to just show the same old stuff over and over. We want to refresh it, right? So basically, as posts get older, they're automatically going to rank lower. And they all say, yeah, okay, these are all pretty good ideas. Let's bundle them up into this system and call it Edgerank. And that'll be our first pass at the solution. And then, in a few months or so, we'll come back and revise it and see what needs to be changed. Well, we're like 15 years out from when they developed Edgerank. And of course, a lot of stuff has changed. So one of the things, Facebook is continually gathering data about user actions, user interactions, looking at what keeps people engaged on Facebook, right? And whatever does, whether it's types of content or messages from particular people, Facebook is looking at all that and trying to track it so that they can deliver people the content that they want and keep them on Facebook longer. Now, of course, given enough data, more accurate predictions of user behavior become possible, right? If you have a lot of data about who does what and why, you can come up with some pretty good approximations. So, give you an example. I'm going to go into Paint here. Suppose I want to build a detailed predictive model of whether Doug will get a donut from his local Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, and there's like a block away from me, so we do occasionally go there. So I want to build this predictive model. Well, what's the big factors? Well, first of all, you might say, is Doug even leaving the house, right? Because if not, probably not getting a donut, right? We can understand that. Can I predict that? Well, to a point, right? If Dunkin' Donuts knew my teaching schedule, right? And assuming we are no longer remote learning, okay? They could know which days I'll be passing by, right? And weekends are always a possibility. But that's not going to be extremely accurate, right? So there might be other factors. There might be other factors like, am I sick, right? Am I leaving the house for that? Did I eat breakfast at home? Or am I in a big rush to catch the train and no time for donuts, right? Or am I trying to be healthier and eat fewer donuts? Or have I totally given up and decided to eat donuts every day as part of a donut eating challenge, some ill-advised donut eating challenge, right? If Facebook or if Dunkin' Donuts knew all sorts of little details like that, maybe this predictive model is going to be about 50% accurate, right? It's better than nothing, but it's not going to be, it's better than a wild ass guess, but it's not going to be super accurate. But maybe if I can capture all this stuff, maybe it gets to something like 95% accurate. Okay, so that would be important to know, because if they can do that for a whole batch of customers, they can do all sorts of things like optimize their donut availability based on who's going to show up, right? And figure out how many donuts they need to have on hand. They can do, with this information, for all customers, right? DD could absolutely streamline their business processes, right? They could bring in, you know, fresher donuts all the time when they want them. Imagine that if you went every time you went to Dunkin' Donuts, there was your favorite flavor of donut that had just been made, and it would be even more delicious. This would be a huge competitive advantage, right, compared to other donut service providers. Yum. Okay. And that's the same sort of thing Facebook is trying to do. Facebook is trying to track all this information to learn more about you so they can deliver content you like. All right. So, like I said, typically only a few variables are going to be strong predictors. Maybe if you just knew a couple of big things about somebody, you could get like 60, 70% accuracy on what they like. But there's going to be a lot of less relevant variables that often don't mean much. But together, you can use them to build a very accurate composite profile of what's going to work for a given Facebook user. So these days, Facebook uses many, many variables, literally several hundred variables, and the mix is intermittently changing. They're going to revise their formula. They're going to revise their algorithm and determine how important some variables are. Anyway, they gather a lot of data. They crunch a lot of numbers. They use that to construct your feed, right? It's way past what Edgerank used to be. Okay, we'll take a few minutes to talk about the revenue streams, and then I suppose at the end of that, we can call it a day. So first of all, some of Facebook's revenue streams are direct sources, right? Obviously, ads is a big one. That's Facebook's primary source of revenue. People click on ads, so general model pay per click. When a user clicks on an ad, the advertiser pays Facebook, or paying per impression, right? An impression is if somebody sees the ad, then they have to pay Facebook. And that's usually good for things like things that people aren't going to buy right away. For example, like McDonald's. You're not going to see an ad for McDonald's on Facebook and say, oh my God, I got to go to McDonald's now. But McDonald's is building awareness of a new product that they want people to know about, or if they're sending out a notification of where a McRib is in your town, they're not going to, you know, you're not going to buy that through Facebook probably, but you know, the fact that McDonald's has shown it to you, they might pay Facebook for that privilege. Other stuff, really minor ones, premium site content. Facebook was dabbling in that for a while. They may come back and dabble in it some more. They also get fees from site-enabled transactions. So, for example, you're playing Candy Crush for a while, you get stuck on some level. Candy Crush dangles the prospect of various boosts to get you past it for like, you know, a couple bucks. Yeah, you know Facebook is getting a cut of that. Direct sources, of course, more users and higher engagement. So if there are more users on Facebook, then more users is going to increase the probability that some of them will click on ads or otherwise make money for Facebook. Likewise, higher engagement, if people are spending more time on Facebook and more time actively using it as opposed to just, you know, sitting there with the browser tab open to that, not doing anything. If people are actually using Facebook more throughout the course of the day, they're generally going to see more ads, otherwise become involved in more transactions that are profitable to Facebook. Okay. So accuracy on these models, right, predicting what people are interested in, that leads to more revenue. So if users have a better user experience, they're going to spend more time using, right? If Facebook is showing people more stuff they want to see and less stuff from peripheral friends or stuff they don't want to see. For example, a lot of people are pretty sick of seeing politics in their Facebook feed these days. We're in the election season. So, yeah, to the extent, you know, I see some people say, wow, there's so much politics on Facebook, really tired of it, going to go away for a while. Okay, so that's something. Pay per impression advertising. So if you spend more time using Facebook, you're going to see more ads in general, more ads viewed. It's the impression model. Facebook is definitely going to get more money. And it's generally pretty true for pay per click advertising as well, right? So if people are spending more time using Facebook, they're going to see more ads. If there's a better match between ads and users, right? If Facebook is succeeding in showing users ads that are relevant to them, they're interesting, they're likely to click on them, then they're going to get a higher click rate for the ad. And of course, more clicks on the ads means more dollars for Facebook. So the basic problem for Facebook is controlling the sequence of content. right? So things like friends posts, ads, and the mix of content, whether it's text or images or video. That's Facebook's problem, how they want to do it. So their primary objectives, they want to provide customized and interesting content. So custom different for every user, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be stuff that people like, right? They're going to measure that basically by the frequency of likes or other interactions and how much they spend on Facebook. So the goal is want to maintain and encourage user involvement. They want to show people what they want to see, and thus hopefully get them to stick around Facebook longer, and thereby maximize the sustainable ad revenue, right? So if Facebook just packed the feed with ads, say they had like 9 ads for every one of your friends' posts, Facebook would probably make more money that first day, but over time it would leave them tremendously vulnerable to competition. Somebody could come up with a new social media model, new social media platform that didn't have that many ads, and people would gravitate to it. They'd say, yeah, Facebook used to be fun, but now it's packed with ads. Forget them. Okay, so they want to maximize the sustainable ad revenue. They want to show enough ads that they're making money, but not driving customers away. Okay, so I'll do this. I'll do this last slide, and then we'll call it a day on this Facebook stuff, and then I'll answer any questions that are floating around there. So, like Netflix, Facebook relies primarily on preferences revealed via user actions. So, revealed preferences, the things that Facebook can actually observe people liking. So, if somebody likes a picture, or if somebody clicks on a particular app, there's no hiding that. I mean, Facebook knows, oh, that was something you were interested in enough to click on. And sure, people occasionally make mistakes, click on the wrong things, but in aggregate, that's going to be pretty accurate. It's very different from if Facebook went and just asked people, hey, what sort of stuff would you like to see? Because one of the problems is people aren't entirely honest about that. In particular, for things like films, a lot of users are going to falsely claim preferences with some idealized version of themselves. So people will say, oh, yeah, I like thoughtful dramas, and I like Oscar-winning films, and I like classic old black and white movies, because they think it's a cool thing to say. Or maybe they even like them a little bit, but you know, at the end of the day, they're probably spending more time, you know, watching Marvel superhero movies or stuff with a lot of TNA and guns and whatever. So Netflix jumped ahead of the competition. One of the things that they did is they showed recommendations to people based on what they actually clicked on and watched, not what their state preferences were. So Facebook doesn't ask you what you want to see. It just observes what you interact with. And that's how Facebook learns about you and matches the feed to your preferences. So when they're matching your preferences, the basic rule, it wants to provide you with content that's, as far as Facebook can tell, is similar to what you've interacted with in the past. So it's a user whose posts you frequently comment on, Facebook's going to show you more stuff from that user. If you frequently watch the videos that show up in your feed, yeah, you're going to get more videos. On the other hand, if you almost never look at those videos, you're not going to get as many of them. And also, Facebook keeps some baseline profiles about you. So they do construct a profile, but they also just try to estimate what they can about you from what part of the country you live in and what your job is, stuff like that. They're going to say, well, what do we know about this person? We can get some kind of baseline. For example, somebody who lives in Evanston is probably going to be less likely to, I don't know, say listen to country music than somebody who lives in Georgia or elsewhere in the deep south or in the country, right? It's one of those things that could reasonably be expected. Okay, so that's the short version of how Facebook does it, and we'll follow up with more of this next week. All right, so I'm going to pause the sharing. We're going to stop that, boom. And I am going to stop the recording. Well, let me ask. We have a lot of good chat stuff here, so I'll talk about that in the recording. Okay. So, is it recording? Yes, yes, nice. Is this going to be recorded? Yes, yes. I swear the ads listen to you. The ads do listen to you. Holy shit. Let me tell you something. Do any of you, exactly, does anyone here like scotch? I have a fun story. So if you like scotch, you might have heard of Ardbeg, which is a very nice one if you like that sort of thing. Okay, well, I'd been talking about Ardbeg, I don't know, and I'd done a couple Google searches for it. I was like looking around to find some unusual bottles of it. And then I started seeing these Facebook ads that actually, had Ardbeg for me. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, looking up college books and start getting credit cards. Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. Anything you Google, Facebook knows, right? So there you go. Okay, so some of that's going on. Anyway, okay, so I go to any questions on any of this stuff we covered today? Oh, see, I don't use Snapchat. I'm a little old for that. But yeah, you guys know more about that than I do. Will we just have to know the content on the slides? Yeah, we'll have. Okay, so for the content, right, for understanding, you need to know it fairly well, even though the exams are open book. Okay, we'll have a review session ahead of the exam. Okay, but like I said, the questions won't be simple ones, right? So in open book, there's no point doing basic questions like, uh, I don't know, what's Edgerank? Okay, or I don't know, some other simple factoid type stuff, because that's the stuff that you have there. You're just going to look it up. Uh, the questions will lean more toward applying the knowledge. For example, what would happen if I replaced a hard drive system with RAM, right? And the answer would be more expensive, but much faster. Okay, so those will be the kind of questions that you're going to see. It won't just be something like, what does RAM stand for? Because you're going to be able to look that up really easily. Okay, it'll be, again, more about understanding. So how does Facebook manage different languages? Well, in what sense do you mean? So again, we'll have a review session, but there's no specific study guide. I might provide a list of important topics, but at the end of the day, but the learning is on you. And I will give some suggestions as we get a little bit more into it on how to study. Okay, so you won't be completely helpless, but yeah. I mean, again, these are the lectures, the material's there, it's open book, but you got to learn it. The one thing I will say, there won't be, basically trivia questions, right? So nothing like FB's current monthly users or annual revenue or stuff like that, right? There won't be like factoid type questions because that doesn't really measure learning. That's just, again, stuff you could look up really easily. Okay. So do they translate all the languages? Oh, no. I mean, here's the thing. In one sense, right? Facebook doesn't care what language you speak. What language you speak. Okay. Their machine learning algorithms automatically take care of that. Okay, so even if you speak English but click on, say, a bunch of Spanish language stuff, Spanish language content, whatever kind, Facebook will pick up on that. Okay, that's one of the hundreds of variables. Okay, so they're not gonna assess that necessarily directly, but the content will have as an attribute, this is something in Spanish. If you click on that, then Facebook will notice, oh, this person clicks on a lot of Spanish language content, and that's going to be one of the features that automatically gets brought into stuff you see. Yep, cool. Okay, well, I think we've reached our closing time, so I'm going to stop recording. I'll upload this to YouTube later today, and then I guess that's where we'll be. I'll see you next week. Enjoy the long weekend. Hopefully everybody gets to eat something grilled.